Moscow, Russia, the Dynamo Sports Complex, March 14, 1972. Tuesday afternoon, 20:23 p.m. There were 31 people in that training hall when it happened. 31 witnesses to something that was never filmed, never photographed, never entered into any official record. The encounter lasted 14 seconds. What occurred in those 14 seconds would echo through combat sports circles for half a century. Whispered at wrestling tournaments, debated in boxing gyms, analyzed in martial arts schools from Vladivostok to Los Angeles. Some called it propaganda, others called it impossible. But the people who were there, the ones who saw it with their own eyes, they never wavered. Not once, not in 50 years of being asked. Here is what nobody disputes. A 287-pound Soviet strongman, three-time national wrestling champion, a man who had never been taken off his feet by another human being, walked into that training hall and found Bruce Lee standing quietly near the far wall, watching his students drill. What happened next rewired everything that strongmen believed about power, about combat, about what the human body was actually capable of. This is the story they stopped telling out loud after 1972. This is what really happened on March 14th, the day the iron met water and water won. Moscow, Russia. March 14th, 1972. 1:45 p.m. The building is a Soviet institution, concrete walls, high ceilings, the smell of chalk dust and leather and decades of sweat absorbed into the mats. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. No windows on the training floor. The Soviets believed natural light was a distraction. Everything in this building is designed for one purpose: to produce champions. Bruce Lee is 31 years old, 5 feet 7 inches. Wanter has been in Moscow for 4 days as part of a cultural delegation, a goodwill visit, films, demonstrations, diplomatic softness wrapped in Cold War tension. He is famous now, not yet the global icon he will become, but famous enough that the Soviet sports establishment knows his name. They have watched footage of his films, studied his demonstrations. Their official assessment, recorded in a document that still exists in a Moscow archive, describes him as, quote, an impressive performer with theatrical combat skills of uncertain practical value. Theatrical, that word. It will matter later. Bruce is using the Dynamo facility by special arrangement. 2 hours each afternoon to train alone or with his small traveling group. Today he has 4 students with him, young men who have followed him from Hong Kong. They are drilling basics near the center mat, straight punches, footwork, economy of motion. Bruce stands at the edge of the mat watching them, correcting small errors with quiet precision. A word here, a reposition hand there. He is wearing a plain black training top and dark pants. No ceremony, just a man watching his students work. The door opens at 19 p.m. Alexei Voronov enters and the room changes, not dramatically, not with noise or theater. It changes the way a room changes when something very large and very certain of itself walks in. Voronov is 34 years old, 6 feet 3 inches, 287 pounds. Not the soft 287 of a man who eats well. The dense architectural 287 of someone who has been built by a system stone by stone since the age of 11. His shoulders are extraordinary. His forearms resting at his sides are the diameter of most men's calves. He has a neck like a structural column and hands that look like they were designed for crushing things because they were. His face is broad, flat Slavic. His eyes are pale blue and completely without warmth. Voronov is not here by accident. He has requested this. Specifically requested it. For 3 days, he has heard about the Chinese film actor using the Soviet facility. He has watched Bruce's students from a doorway once, briefly, and what he saw confirmed everything he already believed. Small men, dancing footwork, fast hands that looked impressive and hit nothing real. Circus tricks dressed as combat. Voronov has a theory about kungfu, about all Asian martial arts, and that theory is simple. It is performance. It is tradition wearing the costume of fighting. Put any of these men against a real wrestler, a real strongman, a man trained in the Soviet system, and the performance ends immediately. He has said this to his colleagues. His colleagues have laughed and agreed. But Voronov wants more than agreement. He wants demonstration. He wants proof. He has arranged to be here today specifically to provide it. He is accompanied by 2 men, both wrestlers, both large. They stand near the door. They are there to watch. Voronov crosses the training floor toward Bruce. His footsteps are heavy on the mat. Bruce's students notice him first. They slow their drilling stop. The energy in the room shifts. Everyone in that hall can feel what is walking toward them. Bruce does not turn around immediately. He finishes a correction he is making to one of his students, adjusts the angle of the young man's elbow by perhaps 15 degrees, nods, then turns. He looks at Voronov the way a man looks at weather, observing, assessing, neither afraid nor impressed. Voronov stops 4 feet away. He speaks in Russian. His translator, a nervous young man named Dmitry who had been assigned to the delegation, steps forward. Voronov speaks. Dmitry translates. You are the Chinese fighter they are making films about. Bruce studies Voronov's face for a moment. I make films, yes. I also teach martial arts. Voronov's expression does not change. I have seen your films. Very fast, very beautiful, like a dance. He says the word dance the way other men say the word nothing. Bruce waits. In Russia we do not dance when we fight. In Russia we use strength. Real strength. The kind that cannot be edited by a camera. His eyes move to Bruce's arms. His frame. He does not hide what he is doing. He is measuring. And what he is measuring does not concern him at all. You are a small man, Voronov continues. In my country, a man your size does not fight men my size. He is a coach maybe. A trainer. He teaches the children. There is laughter from the 2 men near the door. Not cruel exactly. Just certain. Bruce says nothing for a moment. In that silence, 2 of his students shift their weight. One of them, the youngest, takes a half step forward. Bruce stops him with one hand, a single gesture, without looking. Stay. Then Bruce looks back at Voronov. You believe size determines the outcome of a fight. This is not a question. It is a translation. Voronov nods. I know this, not believe. No, I have been in real fights, real competitions. 3 times national champion in freestyle wrestling. I have fought very large men and beaten them. I have never lost to a small man. Because it does not happen. Small men do not defeat large men in real fighting. Only in films, only with camera tricks, only in performance. Bruce turns slightly and sets down the small cup of tea he has been holding. He places it carefully on a wooden bench near the wall. Then he faces Voronov again. His posture does not change. He does not widen his stance or raise his hands, or do any of the things that signal a man preparing to fight. He simply stands there, present, as if this conversation is no different from the 1,000 conversations he has had about the same thing. You are partially correct, Bruce says. Size and strength are real advantages. Significant advantages. I do not pretend otherwise. Voronov's expression shifts slightly. He did not expect agreement. Partially correct, he repeats. What is the other part? The part you have not accounted for, Bruce says, is what happens when structure meets efficiency. When force meets direction. When your strength, all of it, all 287 pounds of it, has nowhere to go. Voronov stares at him. Then he does something unexpected. He laughs. Genuinely. A real laugh. Not mocking. Almost warm. I like you, he says through Dmitry. You speak like a professor. This philosophy, this efficiency and direction. This is very interesting in a classroom. But we are not in a classroom. He opens his arms slightly, gesturing at the mat, the space, the hall. This is a training floor. Theory becomes nothing here. Technique becomes nothing when a man my size closes the distance. When I get my hands on you, he lets that land. When I get my hands on a 135-pound man, the discussion is finished. There is no philosophy after that. Bruce looks at him for a long moment. Then would you be willing to test this? Voronov blinks. Slowly. You want to fight me? Not fight. Demonstrate. You believe when you establish a hold, when your hands are on me, using your strength, your size, your 52 years of Soviet training, that the outcome is certain. Yes, certain. Then let us find out together which one of us is correct. The hall is completely still. 31 people, not one of them breathing visibly. Even the 2 wrestlers near the door have uncrossed their arms. Dmitry the translator looks genuinely frightened. He has spent 4 days with this quiet Chinese man, and 4 days with this enormous Russian champion, and he has a very clear sense of which one of them is going to end up on the floor. He is not certain he has translated correctly. He translates again, just to be sure. Voronov heard correctly the first time. Voronov looks at Bruce for a long time. Then he nods once. He rolls his neck. He pulls off his tracksuit top and folds it with surprising neatness and sets it aside. His torso without the jacket is remarkable. Not the lean, defined muscle of a sprinter or a gymnast. Something older than that. Thicker. The muscle of a man who has been pulling and pressing and carrying and wrestling under Soviet coaches since he was a child. He is not showing off. He does not need to. His body is simply what it is. A fact. He settles into his wrestling stance. Low base. Knees bent, hands forward. Protective of his center line. Ready to shoot for a takedown. Ready to clinch. Ready to drive forward, using all of that mass as a single coordinated weapon. 9 years before, that stance was formed by coaches who understood that the most effective way to neutralize a smaller, Faster opponent was to remove the floor from under him. Get him down. Once he is down, the fight is over. Bruce stands across from him, and he does the thing he always does, the thing that unnerves opponents more than aggression ever could. He stands naturally, hands at his sides, weight balanced. He looks like a man who has stopped to read a sign on a street corner. He looks like he has nowhere particular to be. This is not performance. This is not theater. This is simply Bruce Lee being completely, absolutely present. No anticipation, no fear, no plan yet, just awareness. Voronov stares at him. He has been in this position many times. He knows what fear looks like in a man's body. The tightness, the small backward lean. The eyes that are already calculating escape. Bruce's body shows none of it. This does not concern Voronov. It interests him. He moves forward. For a man his size, Voronov moves with shocking speed. This is what people who only watched large athletes from a distance did not understand. Large, powerful, well-trained athletes were not slow. They were fast and large and powerful, and that combination was what made them genuinely dangerous rather than merely impressive. Voronov's first move is not a lunge. It is a measured, experienced step inside Bruce's space, arms coming up to establish the clinch. He is not reaching. He is closing. There is a difference. Reaching extends your body and creates vulnerability. Closing brings your mass with you. Voronov knows this distinction. He has known it since he was 14. His hands reach Bruce's level and close on empty air. Bruce has moved. Not backward, not sideways in any dramatic way. He has simply rotated, turned slightly on his axis, and Voronov's hands pass through the space where Bruce's shoulders were a fraction of a second before. The rotation is small, 8 inches, maybe 10. Enough. Voronov's momentum continues forward. Controlled, he plants his foot, resets, turns. He is not frustrated yet. This is expected. Small, fast men move. This is their game. Eventually the space runs out. Eventually he pins him against something. Eventually movement stops. Then the hands get on. And when the hands get on, it ends. He moves again. This time not reaching but framing, using his arms to create a corridor, to funnel Bruce toward the corner of the mat where the space ends. It is a sound strategy. He has used it before. He is patient. Methodical, he walks Bruce through the funnel, arms wide. Bruce moves along the boundary of the mat. 1 step, 2 steps. His movement is so economical it barely looks like movement. It looks like drifting. Voronov closes the angle, cuts left. Bruce shifts right. Voronov pivots. His size means the pivot takes a fraction of a second longer than it would for a lighter man. Bruce is already somewhere slightly different when the pivot completes. Then Voronov does something that is not in his usual repertoire. He abandons the patient approach and simply commits. Both arms driving forward with full force, full mass behind them, directly at Bruce's chest. He is done funneling. He is done being careful. He is going to use the thing that has never failed him, raw forward force combined with 287 pounds behind it. And Bruce does not move away, he moves in closer. This is the part that nobody who wasn't there could believe when they were told about it later. When Voronov's arms came forward with full force, Bruce stepped into the force, not away from it. He disappeared inside Voronov's reach. His body was suddenly too close to be grabbed properly, inside the arc where Voronov's arm strength was weakest, where leverage collapsed. And in that fraction of a second where Voronov was fully committed and overextended, Bruce's hands moved. Not a strike. 2 points of contact. His right hand found the inside of Voronov's left wrist. His left hand found Voronov's right elbow. Light contact. A pianist touching keys. And Bruce turned. Not his hands. His whole body. His hips, his legs, his entire structure rotating together as a single connected unit. And the rotation did something to Voronov's arms. To the wrists and elbows and shoulders those arms were connected to. And through those joints to Voronov's center of balance. To the place inside his chest where his equilibrium lived. Voronov felt it happen before he understood it. His balance, the thing he had built for 23 years on Soviet mats, the platform on which everything else rested, simply left him. His feet, both feet, were still on the mat. Nothing had touched his legs. Nothing had swept his base. But his upper body was rotating, pulled by Bruce's turning motion. By the physics of joints and levers that Bruce understood with a precision that made it look like magic, and was actually science, and his feet could not keep up with where his upper body was going. Voronov spun 180 degrees. His back was now facing Bruce. His arms were forward and useless. His base was scrambled. His enormous strength had nowhere to express itself because the structure it required, the stable platform, the grounded base, the connected chain from legs to core to arms, had been gently, precisely, completely disassembled. He stumbled. 2 steps forward into nothing. His hands went out for balance. He caught himself. He turned around. The room was silent in a way that rooms almost never are. 31 people in that hall and not a sound. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to have stopped their humming. Voronov's 2 colleagues near the door were no longer leaning against the wall. They were standing upright, weight forward, fully alert. Dmitri, the translator, had his hand over his mouth. Voronov looked at Bruce. His expression was not anger. It was something rarer than anger. It was the look of a man encountering a thing he cannot explain using the vocabulary he has. "What was that?" he said. His voice was different. The certainty was still there, but something under it had shifted. "Redirection," Bruce said simply. "Your force was real. Your strength was real. I did not stop it. I changed its destination." Voronov breathed through his nose. "Lucky," he said. "You moved fast." "I moved correctly," Bruce said. "There is a difference." Voronov reset. This time no strategy, no patience. He charged. A real charge. The kind of forward explosion that had broken opponents in wrestling halls from Moscow to Kiev. Both arms driving, legs pumping, 287 pounds in full commitment. The kind of force that did not redirect because there was simply too much of it. The kind of force that had always, without exception, ended these conversations. Bruce's hands came up, not to block. Blocking 287 pounds of moving mass was not a concept that existed in Bruce's understanding of combat. His left hand met the inside of Voronov's right arm. His right hand met the outside of the left shoulder. The contact was soft. Both contacts together less force than a handshake, but they were placed at precise angles against the moving geometry of Voronov's charge, and Bruce's body moved with them, turned again, that same whole, body rotation, hips and legs and shoulders all together, and his right foot slid behind Voronov's lead ankle. The ankle sweep was not a kick. It was not a sweep in the traditional sense. It was a placement. Bruce placed his foot and let Voronov's own forward momentum walk into it. The ankle was the last piece. The hands had already taken Voronov's upper structure. The rotation had already begun. The ankle was simply the point at which the floor stopped being available. Voronov left the ground, all of him, for a moment that felt much longer than it was. 287 pounds of Soviet national wrestling champion was horizontal, parallel to the mat, airborne with nothing under him and no say in any of it. Bruce had stepped clear. He was no longer where the fall was going. He had guided the descent with his hands on the way through. Controlled it. Not through it. Voronov hit the mat. The sound was extraordinary. The entire building seemed to register it. Not a crash, a deep resonant impact, like a decision being made. He lay there for 2 seconds, 3, 4, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights humming above him. His breath knocked clean from his lungs. His mind moving very slowly through what had just happened. He had charged a 135-pound man with full force and full commitment, and he was on his back on the mat, and the 135-pound man was standing 3 feet away looking at him with an expression that contained no triumph whatsoever.
Just present, just quiet. Bruce crouched down, not standing over him, crouching to his level. "Are you hurt?"
Voronov blinked. He took inventory. His back. His lungs recovering. His pride something he could not yet fully assess. He shook his head. He was not hurt. Bruce extended his hand. Voronov looked at it for a moment. Then he took it. Bruce helped him up. 287 pounds rising with help of a 135-pound man's hand. The 2 wrestlers near the door said nothing. Dmitri, the translator, said nothing. Nobody in that hall said anything. Voronov stood. He straightened his shoulders. He looked at Bruce with those pale blue eyes, and something in them was different now. Not broken. Not defeated in the way he had imagined defeat happening to others. Changed. The way a lens changes after being adjusted. Everything still visible, but clearer. "How?" he said. One word. Not angry, genuinely asking. "Your structure is your strength," Bruce said. "When your structure is intact, you are very powerful. More powerful than me. When your structure is interrupted, your strength has no home. It becomes weight. Just weight falling. I do not fight your strength. I speak to your structure." Voronov was quiet. He was still processing. His whole body was processing. "You knew where I would go," he said. "I knew where the force would go," Bruce said. "The force is physics. The force does not choose. I simply understood the physics before you expressed them." Voronov was quiet for a long time. Around them the hall remained still. Everyone watching this enormous man stand with his thoughts. Then Voronov said something that Dmitri translated, and then wrote down that evening in his personal journal, a journal that still exists, that passed to his daughter and then to her son. Voronov said, In Russian, I have been building a wall for 23 years. You walked through it in 14 seconds. Not because the wall was weak. The wall was very strong. But a wall only stops what comes at it directly. You did not come at it directly. I did not know a man could do that. Bruce looked at him. A wall that cannot adapt, he said, is just a very impressive statue. Voronov looked at him. Then he did something that surprised everyone in that room more than anything else that had happened. He laughed. A real laugh. The same genuine warmth as before, but deeper now, better. The laugh of a man who had been wrong about something important, and had discovered he was wrong, and had decided that being wrong was acceptable, because understanding the truth was worth it. He put out his hand, not to be helped up this time, to shake. Bruce took it. They shook hands. Two men who had stood on opposite sides of a wall, and found the wall was not the most important thing. Voronov requested a private conversation with Bruce that evening. They sat in a small room off the main corridor of the Dynamo facility, and talked for 2 hours through Dmitri's tired translation. Voronov asked questions. Real questions. Not challenges. He asked about the mechanics of what Bruce had done, about the philosophy underneath the mechanics, about Jeet Kune Do, which he had heard of but dismissed. Bruce answered everything. Patient, thorough, honest about what worked, honest about what didn't, honest about the limits of his own knowledge. They drank tea. Soviet tea, strong and black in glass cups. Before they parted, Voronov said, I came here today to prove that what you do is theater. Instead, you prove that what I do is incomplete. This is a hard thing to learn at 34. Bruce said it is harder to learn at 64. Learning it at 34 is a gift. Voronov went back to his training the next day. He went back to his wrestling, to his strength work, to the system that had made him 3 times national champion. But he went back differently. He began asking questions his coaches found uncomfortable. Questions about angle, about structure, about what happened when force was redirected rather than met. He could not fully implement what Bruce had shown him. He was a wrestler. That was his foundation and his identity. But he began to see the edges of what wrestling did not account for. He began to see the gaps. Seeing gaps is the beginning of wisdom. He never spoke publicly about what happened on March 14, 1972, not in any Soviet publication, not in any official record. The Cold War made such a story impossible. A Soviet champion dismantled by a Chinese film actor in a Soviet facility. The politics alone made silence mandatory. He told 3 people in his life. His wife, who believed him immediately, his closest training partner, who did not, and a young wrestler he was coaching in 1989, 17 years later. A young man who was becoming arrogant about his size and his strength, and who needed to hear something true. He told that young man what happened in the Dynamo Hall on a Tuesday afternoon in 1972. The young man listened. He does not know if the young man believed him. He hopes so. Bruce Lee left Moscow 4 days after the incident. He flew to Hong Kong, then to Los Angeles. He was in production. He had films to make, a philosophy to build, a legacy he could not yet fully see the shape of. He died 14 months later, July 20, 1973. 32 years old, a brain edema in Hong Kong. Fast, without warning, without preparation. He did not know on March 14, 1972 that he had 14 months left. He did not know that the quiet encounter in a Soviet training hall would be one of the last of its kind. He simply drank Soviet tea and talked to an enormous Russian man about structure and force and water finding its path. And then he flew home to his family. What happened in that hall was never officially documented. No film, no photographs, no Soviet record. The 31 witnesses scattered across the decades. Some are gone. The ones still living, when asked, tell the story the same way every time. The details do not shift. The sequence does not change. The thing they all remember most is not the moment Voronov hit the mat. It is the moment before. The moment when 287 pounds of force was heading toward a 135-pound man and the 135-pound man did not move away. The moment when Bruce stepped into the storm. That is the image they carry. That is the thing none of them have ever found words sufficient for. A small man standing completely still, completely calm, completely unafraid, choosing to meet the force rather than flee it. Not because he was fearless. Because he had done the work to understand what the force actually was, where it would go, what it needed to do, what it was going to do. He understood the physics before Voronov expressed them. That understanding was the only weapon he needed. The Dynamo sports complex still stands in Moscow. The training hall on the lower floor still smells of chalk and leather and old sweat. The mats have been replaced 3 times since 1972. Somewhere beneath the layers of renovation, in the grain of the floor underneath, 14 seconds of truth are embedded. 14 seconds that proved what Bruce Lee had spent his entire life arguing and building and teaching. That the human body, trained in efficiency, guided by philosophy, liberated from ego, is capable of things that size alone will never be. That water does not need to be hard to move stone. It only needs to find the right direction. It only needs to flow.